Welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about a pretty common question amongst new mushroom farmers, and that's whether or not they need any licenses or permits to cultivate mushrooms where they are. I would love to just give you a blanket yes or no, but I can't. The reason why is the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, they let it be regulated by the states. So you're going to have to look into your own state Department of Agriculture. So for me, it's the Kansas Department of Agriculture, KDA, and they're the ones who you'd contact to find out local regulations. So one of the first questions is whether or not you can sell them. For in Kansas, you don't need to have a permit, and neither in Texas, that's where I was previously, you don't need to have a permit. One thing that changed from going from Texas to Kansas is in Kansas, if you are selling forage mushrooms, not cultivated mushrooms, mushrooms that you go out and pick wild mushrooms, you need to have you need to go to a ID workshop, and then you have to get a registration, and you get an ID. But that's in Kansas. It might not be in your state. You got to look into it, and that's only for foraged mushrooms. And that's to prevent people misidentifying mushrooms and trying to sell them, and then somebody gets hurt, they can track it back and figure out, who picked it, were they trained improperly, all that kind of stuff. So that's in my case in Kansas. It might not be a thing where you're at. And then so past that is sales and packaging. So one issue is, I know in some countries or some states that you can't take mushrooms and package them and seal them up, because then you're packaging a product, and that falls under regulation of being in an inspected kitchen or an inspected packaging facility, which costs tens of thousands of dollars. So some people, instead of doing that, what they'll do is sell open baskets to where it's not a packaged item in a sealed bag. And then if you do want to actually distribute in package envelopes, like a bag or say a clamshell with cellophane around it, you would actually have to find a local place to package it for you, or build and get inspected your own facility, which costs a lot, but depending on what your market is, if that's going to be a big part of your business, it might be worth it. So past that, all the packaging and sales and all that, you might need to also have your farmer's market might have some kind of registration. Sometimes they have limited spots to where only a certain amount of vendors, like let's say there already are 3 mushroom farmers that are at your farmer's market, they might not want to have another mushroom farmer, especially if they're limited with the amount of spots that they have. So that's another thing you need to look into when you're trying to prospect your local area for sales, is there spots in the market available. So that's it for the sales. And then for the other aspect of it is your actual facility. So for me, I was growing in my house. Where I first started off, I was on base. Now that's against the housing association, so technically I shouldn't have been doing that. I was only in there for a couple months, and then I ended up buying a house with a 2-car garage because I wanted to get away from that. I was afraid of getting shut down if they found out. So I don't recommend that, but that was the situation that I was in. And then when I bought my house, one of the top things was to make sure it wasn't in a HOA. So I couldn't have an HOA trying to bust me down for using my garage for something other than parking your car, which is a lot of what the housing associations have. And for those of you who are not familiar, HOA is it's a housing association for your development that adds extra restrictions on top of whatever your city or town code is. So typically it's just a headache. It's for those who want to live in a nice, pretty little neighborhood and not have anybody bugging them, but it's not for me and not for most mushroom farmers, if you ask me. So that's part of the thing is making sure you're not in an HOA. And then beyond that, if you are zoned commercial or residential, you're going to have to check. And then also if you're in or out of the city limits, you might have to go through a zoning board. So for me, my new house in Kansas is inside the city limits. So I had to actually apply for a business license to operate, and part of that is they have a board meeting, and in that board meeting I had to tell them, I had a pitch that I sold them, this is what I'm going to do, this is how big it is, this is the amount of employees, this is the impact that I'm going to have on traffic and all of that kind of things. They want to know, is anything going to be stored outside? Are there going to be trucks delivering things like that. So once you give them the pitch, they make a proposal to the board, they discuss it, they yay or nay it, and in my case it was approved. I live in a residential / commercial lot, so that's perfect. It's almost always had a business ran out of the backyard in that back warehouse, so it was kind of a shoo-in. Now, if you're in a smaller neighborhood, they might consider, well, do we really want, if this is going to be cooking up the smell of the substrate, which is something you should bring up in the meeting, that there is going to be steam, there's going to be, materials being processed and all that. That might be something they're going to count in to the factor of yay or nay. I know some of the people who've been setting up mushroom farms elsewhere, like in Grand River Mushrooms, for example, the Larkins, they were telling me that some local townies were worried that they were going to have piles of manure and piles of straw, and it was going to smell like, like poo, and you smell it from miles away, because a lot of people think that mushroom farms, we're all agaricus farmers, which that's what they do. They have piles of straw and urea, and they sprinkle it, and it smells like, rotting poo. Now that's not the case, so you should make sure that you let the board members know that if you do have to go to a zoning meeting or propose it through a zoning meeting. So yeah, that's part of the process that I had to go through. Another thing is, if you're renting, make sure that you make it very transparent with your landlord. Let them know you're growing mushrooms. Let them know that there is moisture, that there's a possibility of moisture damage, that you're going to do your best to remedy that, and go from there. Also, let them know about the smells. Let them know about what you're going to be lugging the materials in and out, and probably using pallets or large amounts of substrate coming through where you're loading. So there's going to be a lot moving around, and let them know that, so that way they're not caught off guard when you fire up the operation after spending months and months of building it, that, oh my gosh, this has a smell, or this is dirty, you're tracking sawdust everywhere, kind of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much all I can think about today with zoning and with permits and everything. So hopefully that helped some of you farmers that are getting started. If you have any comments, please let me know below. Let me know what your city requirements were. Let me know what your headaches or that you had to deal with to get your farm up and running were. So hopefully you like this. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to support my channel, patreon.com/MyersMushrooms. That's how I run this channel. I don't have the channel monetized, that way, because what's happened in the past to me. So I make money through Patreon. If you want to support the channel, get a click down there and hop on board. And then also check out MyersMushrooms.com if you want some bags or some supplies. Hope you like this. Give it a thumbs up. Take it easy. Keep on mushrooming.